Good morning. The first item of business is general questions. At question number 1, I call Katie Clark.
To ask the Scottish Government, in light of the greater use of private bodies to deliver public services, what its position is on whether freedom of information law should be reformed to close loopholes, strengthen the powers of the Scottish Information Commissioner and enable speedier extension of the coverage of freedom of information to relevant bodies.
Minister Graham Day.
Presiding Officer, Scotland has the most robust FOI laws in the UK, and we will ensure these continue to work effectively to enable access to information about government and public services. As the member is aware, the Scottish Government is currently consulting on a substantial extension of FOI to private care providers. This would be the biggest extension since the Act came into force. The Information Commissioner is fully independent of government and has considerable authority. The Commissioner is, of course, also funded directly from the Scottish budget via the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body, and last year the approved budget was £2.7 million.
Katie Clark.
Private companies have increasingly become major providers of public services across sectors such as justice and transport. Multinationals such as Serco, G4S and Mighty receive substantial amounts of public money to deliver public services but do not need to comply with freedom of information laws. If the same service was provided by government, we would have the right to information. Does the Minister agree that the public should know how their public services are being delivered and how public money is being spent?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, I'm broadly sympathetic to that general point that Katie Clark makes, but if I just say to her, the Government will provide its response to the Stage 1 Committee report on her bill imminently. It's a thoughtful and considered report, and I commend Katie Clark as well for the work she's done on her bill, which has brought FOI into focus. But I would say to her that these are matters that we can explore in detail in the Stage 1 debate on Tuesday, and I look forward to doing that.
Paul McLennan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can the Minister provide figures for both how many freedom of information requests have been made to the Scottish Government and the annual cost, and is he aware of whether this trend is increasing?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, there has been a consistent rise in the number of FOIs that the Government receives. I think it was roughly 4,200 in 2021, 5,100 in 2023, and it's risen to 6,700 in 2025. That's an increase of circa 60% in 4 years. Work is ongoing to review the indicative processing costs associated with FOI to the Scottish Government. It's too early to share those results, but if I say to the member, from the early sampling, there's a significant range of processing costs from approximately £100 right up to £3,000, of course depending on the complexity of the question.
Question number 2, Maurice Golden.
To ask the Scottish Government, in light of recent changes to SQA policy permitting internet-enabled devices such as Chromebooks in exams, what action it is taking to ensure that pupils who rely on speech-to-text as their normal way of working are not, in practice, prevented from using this technology during exams?
Cabinet Secretary Jenny Gilroy.
As an executive non-departmental public body, Qualifications Scotland has now replaced the SQA, which operates at arm's length from ministers and is responsible for its own operational decisions. However, ahead of the 2025 exams, Qualifications Scotland updated its policy to allow the use of internet-enabled devices in exams. This removes barriers for assistive technology users and ensures that students can use their normal way of working from the classroom in assessments. Qualifications Scotland is working with councils and Call Scotland, funded by the Scottish Government, to provide support.
Maurice Golden.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. Chromebooks are used by the majority of local authorities. Parents and support for learning staff have reported that, despite the SQA's policy change, pupils are unable to use speech-to-text on Chromebooks in exams because the required software is not being funded. Therefore, pupils who use speech-to-text as their normal way of working are forced to use a scribe in exams. Does the Cabinet Secretary accept this places those pupils who already face barriers to learning needs as a clear disadvantage? And will she commit to finding a practical solution, whether through funding or technical guidance, such as paying individual invigilators to ensure pupils don't access the internet as a potential way forward?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I think Mr Golden raises a hugely important point, and we want to ensure that no pupils are disadvantaged in relation to the examination requirements and the support that is provided. I will give Mr Golden an undertaking that I will take this matter away to Qualifications Scotland, both in terms of the ask he makes around about funding or in relation to guidance that may be provided in that regard. I hope that gives him some assurance, and I'll be happy to come back to the member in writing once I've received a further update from Qualifications Scotland.
Question number 3 is not lodged. Question number 4, Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on when the purchase of Ardrossan Harbour from Peel Ports Group will be successfully concluded.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
As stated at Parliament on the 8th of January, we are progressing the required review of legal, commercial and subsidy considerations based on the non-binding draft heads of terms. This remains a complex and commercially sensitive matter, and our focus is on achieving purchase with a clean title and final sale and asset transfer. As indicated to the Net Zero Energy and Transport Committee last week, we would expect the purchase deal to be concluded in advance of the dissolution of Parliament for the election period. However, a final decision remains subject to consideration of any associated risk, as well as legal and subsidy control requirements. I will continue to keep this Parliament updated on progress at appropriate stages.
Kenneth Gibson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that helpful answer. I greatly appreciate her commitment to securing this purchase and understand the many complexities involved. Nevertheless, next Thursday will be a year to the day since she announced the intention to buy Ardrossan Harbour, and the matter has still not been settled, even though a price and heads of terms were agreed some time ago. She will appreciate that my Ardrossan and Allen constituents remain deeply frustrated by this. Can the Cabinet Secretary therefore advise what specific hurdles remain and how soon they will be overcome in order that she can achieve her ambition of ensuring this purchase is concluded prior to the dissolution of Parliament?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I do acknowledge the ongoing frustrations felt by local communities, but these negotiations do take time. The member will be aware that the non-binding heads of terms were only agreed in principle between the two parties only a few weeks ago. I met with the CMAL Chief Executive Officer this morning. He confirmed that engagement with Peel Ports remains positive and is ongoing. There are a whole range and a whole suite of documents that are required for the potential purchase agreement, and it's now close to final form. There are matters that Transport Scotland and Scottish Government teams need to do, and I've expressed the need for advice to me as promptly as possible. But rather than hurdles, I think I would describe them as necessary steps to go through, and they cover legal, subsidy and financial aspects of the overall deal in order to allow transactions to conclude.
Thank you. Question number 5, Claire Hockey.
To ask the Scottish Government what support it provides to local authorities to enable them to explore partnership or franchise approaches to public transport.
Minister Jim Fairley.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In December, the Scottish Government sent a draft version of the franchising guidance to the Net Zero Energy and Transport Committee, and it was shared with various stakeholders, including SPT, for consideration and comment. We intend to formally publish the document in the spring while work on the partnership guidance is ongoing. I'm also pleased that £4 million was included in the draft budget to support local transport authorities to build business cases for local bus improvement through franchising, and we will develop appropriate governance arrangements and details of administering the fund in consultation with the stakeholders, including COSLA.
This chamber before about some of the experiences people in my Rutherglen constituency have faced with service reductions, the proposed cancellation and thankfully U-turn on the 65 service, and how this has all been compounded by the removal of free school buses from hundreds of young people by South Lanarkshire Council. Would the Minister agree with me that it's absolutely crucial that decisions about bus provision are made with people rather than done to people, and that moves towards partnership or franchise approaches are ultimately what will allow that to happen in an open and transparent way?
Minister.
Claire Hockey raises a really crucial point, which I'm not sure that people fully understand, and that's the vitality of buses in local communities and how they make up their connectivity matrix. As for the school transport, under the Education Scotland Act 1980, local authorities are responsible for making the arrangements they consider necessary to provide free transport to schools in the local area, and there are a number of things they need to consider in doing so. Regarding the public transport, the Scottish Government is committed, in partnership with operators and local authorities, to looking at ways of ensuring that everyone has accessible public transport regardless of where they live. Both the partnership and franchising powers available to the local transport authorities provide opportunities for people to engage with the proposals to improve their local bus network, and I encourage people to do so.
Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Glaswegians are paying the highest bus fares of any British city, £6.30 for a day ticket, £3.25 for a single. Bus franchising desperately needs to be sped up so we can get it implemented in Greater Glasgow. So will the Minister commit to providing the full £4 million allocation to Strathclyde passenger transport, because that is the only RTP currently pursuing franchising? And will he also commit to urgent publication of the guidance? The spring seems too vague. Can we get it sped up even quicker? Thank you.
Minister.
As the member knows, the franchising system is ongoing. The £4 million has been allocated, and I'm quite sure there will be other bodies who will say that £4 million shouldn't all go to SPT, and that's still under discussion. As far as the guidance will be issued once people have had a chance to properly look at it and comment on it, and it will be published in the spring, as I've just stated.
Thank you. Question number 6, Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what action it will take to boost the economy of Aberdeen and the north east of Scotland.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, the Scottish Government is ensuring that the transition to net zero delivers benefits for businesses and communities across the North East. And that's why the £500 million Just Transition Fund is already working to boost the economy in Aberdeen. We're also working in partnership to deliver the £160 million investment zone, and that's going to be key to the economy's diversification by embracing entrepreneurship and innovation. And then we've also invested £125 million in the Aberdeen City Region deal over 10 years to grow the region's economy by building on its strengths across the energy, life sciences and food and drink sectors.
Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the Deputy First Minister for that answer. This week, research by Aberdeen-based consultancy Aspect found that energy sector leaders described business confidence as, and I quote, spectacularly low and back in 2015 crash territory, end quote. Aspect's report cites Labour's tax on Scotland's energy as having done, and I quote, real damage to the UK's reputation as a place to invest. The Labour Party is distracted as it tears itself apart in a brutal civil war after Anas Sarwar's botched coup and his London Labour boss failed miserably. Meanwhile, Scotland's energy sector is paying the price for Labour mismanagement. Will the Deputy First Minister pledge to continue to highlight the stupidity of Labour's energy profits levy, to battle for change and do all she can to protect jobs in Aberdeen and the North East?
On matters of devolved responsibility, Deputy First
Well,
Minister.
Presiding Officer, the short answer is yes. The Energy Profits Levy, introduced by the Conservatives, although they seem to forget that fact, extended and increased by Labour, is having a detrimental impact on the workforce in the North East. And the Aspect report, which cites how low business confidence is and the damaging effect of the Energy Profits Levy, is aligned with what we hear from employers who are regretfully having to let people go because of the Energy Profits Levy. So we have called on the UK Government to ensure that they support the energy workforce, and on that point we are totally aligned with the unions who are making the same calls.
Thank you. I'd ask those shouting from their seats to cease. Liam Kerr.
Thank you. The economy of Aberdeen and the North East would, of course, be boosted if this SNP government paid up the remaining 83% of the Just Transition Fund, removed the SNP's presumption against oil and gas, which has so damaged the industry, as Aspect found, reinstated the £80 million carbon capture fund that we were promised, gave us the rest of the £200 million City deal money it was promised in 2016, and reduced our eye-watering business rates. Any of these going to happen, Minister?
Always through the chair. Deputy First Minister.
I was just trying to remember how much funding that the Conservatives provided to the Just Transition Fund, and despite asking for many years whilst they were in government, I don't recall a single penny being given through the Just Transition Fund for the North East. With an independent evaluation of the funding that we've provided through the Just Transition Fund, we have seen at least 230 jobs being created and safeguarded, more than 750 training places opened up, and over £30 million of private investment attracted, all delivered because we paid up, we invested, unlike the Conservatives.
Question number 7, Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government if the First Minister and the rest of the Cabinet are ashamed that the written case for Scottish ministers and the Lord Advocate in the judicial review of the SPS policy for the management of transgender people in custody did not include a single mention of women's rights.
Cabinet Secretary Angela Constance.
Presiding Officer, the judgment of the Supreme Court is accepted by the Scottish Government. We are ensuring, as any responsible government must, that our policies comply with all of our legal obligations, including, of course, the Scotland Act and the European Convention on Human Rights. It is the Scottish Government's long-held position that it does not regard it as appropriate to engage in public comment in respect of live court proceedings. That is different from saying that the position is that the Scottish Government cannot comment or is prevented from commenting generally on live litigation, although there will be cases in which the Contempt of Court Act 1981 is engaged to that effect to ensure there is no risk of impediment or prejudice to the proceedings. In all cases, we have an obligation to uphold the independence of the judiciary, and we do not want the Government to ever be seen as interfering in the work of our independent courts.
Douglas Ross.
That may be an answer to one question. It's just not an answer to the question I asked. So I'm going to repeat it, but I do have to take exception, first of all, to the Justice Secretary saying this Government agrees with the Supreme Court ruling. They don't. They're in court arguing against the very Supreme Court ruling. But a body language expert would have a field day at the moment because of the uncomfortable look on the front bench. Not a single one of them is looking up at the moment. The First Minister can't even look at me. So I will ask this question again to the Justice Secretary. Is John Swinney and the rest of his Cabinet ashamed that in this court case and their written argument they did not mention women's rights once? And if they're not ashamed, why not?
Cabinet Secretary. Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, in general terms, I am, of course, reminded of the quote by Hillary Clinton at a UN conference on women's rights. And the quote is that human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights. And, of course, I would hope...
Let's hear one another.
...that in this chamber that we would all have the humility to recognise that there is no monopoly on concern for women's rights and women's equality. And with regards to Mr Ross's comments where he disputes our acceptance of the rule of law and the Supreme Court judgment, I can of course point to action across government and indeed justice where our compliance with that policy is demonstrated. We have recently published for consultation the new guidance on stop and search. And of course, Presiding Officer, in the interest of justice, the Government published, in the interest of open justice, the Government published its written case and the note of arguments. And it is, of course, for the courts to determine and judge on those arguments.
Thank you. Thank you, Cabinet Secretary.
I am sure that will be done.
I will have to go on to the next question. Question number 8, Jamie Hepburn.
To ask the Scottish Government what assessment is made of the impact of the removal of peak rail fares.
Cabinet Secretary.
Transport Scotland undertook an evaluation of the pilot scheme for the removal of peak fares in August 2024. It surveyed passengers and found 80% of respondents were making more trips by rail, and of these around three-quarters suggested that the primary reason was the pilot. Work is currently underway to evaluate the long-term effects of removing peak fares for good, and we expect to be able to share initial findings once the policy has been in place for at least 6 months. What is certain is that the removal of ScotRail peak fares for good is currently saving money for hundreds of thousands of people in Scotland who travel by rail, and in Jamie Hepburn's constituency, passengers travelling travelling from Cumbernauld and Croy to Glasgow save around £4 each time they purchase a return ticket to travel during the busiest commuter times.
Thank you. Brief supplementary, Jamie Hepburn.
Since the removal of peak rail fares, there's been a very welcome increase in rail usage from Croy Railway Station, my constituency, but this has exacerbated car parking pressures on the site. Can the Cabinet Secretary set out what support there might be to explore an expansion of car parking there and also encourage greater use of services on the Cumbernauld line, given there is an underutilised car park at Greenfalls Railway Station?
Cabinet Secretary.
So there's no investment to expand the car park facilities at Croy currently. It doesn't feature in our plans, but the route exists for the business case to be submitted by third-party promoters such as the regional transport partnerships or local authorities. Greenfalls Station has seen a growth in patronage, and passengers will be able to benefit from the cross-border service on Stirling to London Euston route. And of course, passengers travelling from Croy enjoy a frequent, fast and reliable service, and is supported by the Scottish Government's investment in removing peak fares for good, and our announcement today that we're freezing ScotRail fares for a year come from April.
Thank you. That concludes general questions.